The girl on my examination table had burns that crawled up her left arm like ivy on a dying tree. 3rd degree, maybe worse. The kind of scars that told a story no one wanted to hear twice. She was 19, maybe 20, an Omega veteran from the Border War's final offensive. Her service record said she'd served 8 months before the incendiary grenade took her squad. She was one of the lucky ones. She'd survived. I kept my hands steady as I cleaned the wound, applying the silver-based salve we used for wolf healing. The scent of it cut through the small clinic, sharp and medicinal. Outside the single window, the border town of Greywater went about its business. Merchants hawked their wares. Children played in the dusty street. The war felt far away here, buried under 2 years of careful forgetting. "Does it hurt?" The girl's voice was small. I didn't look up from my work. "The salve or the memory?" She went quiet. I knew that silence. Wore it myself most days like an old coat, comfortable and suffocating all at once. My own scars were harder to see. The limp in my left leg from the shrapnel that had torn through my thigh at the siege of Thornridge. The furrow across my ribs from a blade that should have killed me. But those were just the ones on the outside. The ones that showed when I undressed or when the weather turned cold, and every old wound sang its particular song of pain. The ones inside ran deeper. I finished bandaging the girl's arm with practiced efficiency. 20 years in the Royal Army left you with a lot of practice. Field dressing, triage under fire, holding someone's hand while they bled out because there wasn't a damn thing else you could do. "Keep it clean," I told her. "Change the dressing twice daily. If you see any red streaking, any fever, you come back immediately. Understand?" She nodded, eyes downcast. "Thank you, Major Blackstone." "Just Mara now," I said, the correction automatic. "I'm not a major anymore." She left with a small pouch of extra bandages and a bottle of salve I couldn't really afford to give away. But she needed it more than I needed the coin. That was the thing about running a veterans clinic in a border town on the edge of nowhere. You saw the cost of war every single day, measured in burns and missing limbs and eyes that had seen too much. I cleaned up the examination table, disposed of the soiled bandages, washed my hands in the basin. The routine was soothing, predictable. I'd built my whole life around predictability since the discharge. Wake at dawn, open the clinic, treat whoever came through the door, close at sunset, dinner alone, a glass of whiskey, sometimes 2, sometimes the whole bottle, then sleep if the nightmares allowed it. They usually didn't. The afternoon light was slanting long through the window when I heard the hoofbeats outside, not unusual in Greywater. Most folks still traveled by horse, the old ways holding strong in places the modern world hadn't quite reached. But something about the rhythm made me pause. Military cadence, formal and precise. I dried my hands and stepped to the window. The rider wore the deep crimson of the Royal Guard, palace insignia on his shoulders, colonel's rank gleaming in the sunlight. He dismounted with the easy grace of someone who'd spent more time in the saddle than out of it, handing the reins to a street urchin with a coin that made the kid's eyes go wide. Then he turned toward my clinic and my breath caught. Reese, my baby brother, looked like hell. Oh, he wore the uniform well enough, all spit and polish and military bearing. But I'd known him since he was a squalling infant. I could read the pallor under his tan, the tightness around his eyes, the way he held himself just a fraction too carefully, like a man nursing an injury he didn't want anyone to see. The clinic door opened. Reese stepped inside, and for a moment we just stared at each other across the small space. 2 years since I'd seen him last. He'd filled out through the shoulders, added a few new scars I could see peeking above his collar. But his eyes were the same, dark and steady and far too knowing. "Mara," he said. "Reese." I crossed my arms, leaning back against the examination table. Long way to come for a social call. It's not a social call. Of course it wasn't. My brother was a dedicated officer, a rising star in the Royal Army, personal guard to the king himself. He wouldn't ride 3 days to the ass end of nowhere just to say hello. Not when there was a kingdom to protect or a promotion to chase or whatever the hell the palace was obsessing about these days. "Then state your business, Colonel." I kept my voice flat. professional. The same tone I'd used with 1,000 superior officers over 2 decades of service. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or regret. His Majesty requests your presence at the palace, immediately. The words hit like a punch to the sternum. I straightened, uncrossing my arms. The king? Why would King Damon want anything to do with a discharged soldier? Because you're the best tactical mind the royal army ever produced. Because the kingdom is in danger. Because he needs someone he can trust absolutely. Rhys took a step closer, and I could see it then. The tremor in his hands before he clasped them behind his back. The sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the cool autumn air. Because I need you, sis. One last mission. Find someone else. I turned away, busying myself with organizing supplies that didn't need organizing. Anything to avoid looking at him. At the desperation I could smell rolling off him in waves. There is no one else. Not for this. He pulled an envelope from inside his jacket. Royal seal, encrypted orders. A conspiracy threatens the throne. Chancellor Victor has been gathering support among the nobility. He's calling for a return to the old ways. Strong alpha rule without the council's oversight. He's planning something big, something that could tear the kingdom apart. I set down the bottle I'd been holding carefully, turning back to face my brother. And the king thinks I can help with that? How exactly? I've been out for 2 years. I'm half crippled from that shrapnel wound. I run a clinic, not a spy network. The king is hosting the Veterans Memorial Gala in 2 weeks. Every noble family will attend, every high-ranking officer, every member of the Royal Council. Victor will make his move then. We're certain of it. Rhys held out the envelope. His Majesty needs someone to oversee security, someone who can think like a soldier, spot threats, coordinate defenses, someone Victor won't see coming because she's been off the board for 2 years. You mean someone expendable? I mean someone brilliant who the king trusts implicitly because you saved his life at Thornridge 15 years ago. He's never forgotten that, Mara. Never forgotten that you held the line when everyone else was ready to break. Thornridge. The name alone made old wounds ache. 3 days holding a crumbling fortification with 12 soldiers against impossible odds. 9 dead, 3 survivors, and we'd only lived because King Damon, then just Crown Prince, had led the relief force himself. I owed that man my life. Everyone in my squad had. Well, everyone who'd survived long enough to owe anyone anything. Why me? I asked again. Specifically me, not just any tactical officer. Rhys's expression shifted, became something complicated. Because His Majesty asked for you by name, said if anyone could keep him alive through what's coming, it would be the woman who held Thornridge with 9 dead soldiers and refused to surrender. He pulled a second document from his jacket, this one bearing the king's personal seal. I took it with trembling fingers, broke the wax, unfolded the parchment. The handwriting was strong, decisive. Each letter formed with the precision of someone who'd spent years signing orders that sent men to their deaths. Major Blackstone, I have no right to ask this of you. You've given 20 years to the crown, bled for it, lost people you loved defending it. Your discharge was earned and honorable, but the kingdom stands at a precipice. Forces within my own court plot against the throne, against everything we fought to build. I need someone I can trust, someone who values duty over politics, someone who won't flinch when the cost gets high. I need you. If you refuse, I'll understand. You owe me nothing, but if you accept, know that you'll have my complete trust, my protection, and my gratitude for as long as I draw breath. His Majesty King Damon Ashford. I read it twice, then a third time. The words didn't change. My sister's face flashed through my mind. Elena. 3 years younger than me, 1 year older than Rhys. She died in an ambush 15 years ago during the Thornridge offensive. Died screaming while I'd run, following her last order to save the other survivors of our squad. Run, Mara, run! I've been running ever since. 1 mission, I heard myself say. Then I'm done, understand? Relief washed over Rhys's face, so profound it was almost painful to witness. Understood. We leave at dawn. He turned to go, then paused at the door. Mara, thank you. I didn't answer. Just stood there holding the king's letter, feeling the weight of it. Not just paper and wax and ink, but obligation, duty. The thing I'd sworn I was done with when they'd pinned that medical discharge to my chest and sent me limping away from the only life I'd ever known. That night, I packed by lamplight. Not much to bring. A worn rucksack, my old service uniform carefully folded at the bottom. A few changes of civilian clothes. My field kit with its scalpels and sutures and medicines. The small flask of whiskey I kept for when the nightmares got too bad. And my knife. The blade was old, military issue from before I'd even made officer. I'd carried it through 20 years of combat, used it to save lives and take them, seen it drink blood on 3 continents. The handle was wrapped in leather stained dark from sweat and use. I strapped it to my belt, and it settled there like it had never left. Sleep didn't come. I sat at my small kitchen table, staring at the king's letter. What was so critical it required a washed-up, half-crippled former major to address. What kind of threat needed someone the Chancellor wouldn't see coming? I poured a measure of whiskey, let it burn down my throat, then another. The nightmares would come regardless. Might as well dull the edges. When I finally dozed off, head pillowed on my arms at the table, Elena came to me as she always did. Young and vital and whole, the way she'd been before the ambush. Before the blood. She was smiling, that wild, reckless grin she got before a raid. "Live for both of us," she said. "Just live, Mara." Then the dream shifted and she was screaming, throat torn open, blood pouring between her fingers as she tried to hold herself together. "Run!" she gasped. "Run, Mara, run!" I woke with a start, the table hard against my cheek, dawn light creeping through the window. My face was wet. I wiped it roughly, refusing to acknowledge the tears. Reese was waiting outside with 2 horses when I emerged, rucksack over my shoulder. He looked worse than yesterday. The pallor had deepened to an unhealthy gray, and when he hauled himself into the saddle I saw him wince. "You sure you're fit to travel?" I asked, mounting my own horse with practiced ease despite my bad leg. "I'm sure we don't have a choice." He nudged his horse forward and mine fell in beside him. We rode in silence for the first hour, leaving gray water behind. The border country was beautiful in autumn, all gold and crimson leaves, the mountains sharp against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. I'd missed this, I realized, missed the feeling of motion, of purpose, of going somewhere that mattered. The clinic was good work, important work, but it was also hiding. Safe and small and utterly removed from the world that had shaped me. "How bad is it really?" I asked when we stopped to water the horses. "The situation at court." Reese was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You remember what it was like at the end of the war? The chaos? The nobles barely holding together, everyone scrambling for position, old grudges bubbling up? I remember. It's worse now. Chancellor Victor has been gathering support among the old families. The ones who remember when the Alpha King's word was absolute law, when the council didn't exist to question royal decrees." Reese's hands tightened on his reins. Publicly, he's calling for stronger leadership, an end to what he calls the council's interference in royal prerogative. Privately, intelligence suggests he's planning to remove the king and install a regency with himself as Lord Protector. A coup. We think so, but we can't prove it. Not yet. And if we move against the Chancellor without proof, we risk civil war. Half the nobility still believes in the old ways. They'd rally to Victor in a heartbeat. I processed that watching the horses drink. Where does King Damon stand? Publicly, he's maintained the balance his father established, sharing power with the council, respecting noble privileges while protecting commoner rights. Privately, he's been pushing for reforms, veteran support programs, legal protections for Omegas, limits on noble taxation. Reese turned to look at me, and his eyes were haunted. Victor sees it as weakness, calls the king soft, says he's betraying his alpha birthright by treating lesser wolves as equals. Lesser wolves. The phrase made my stomach turn. That's what they call us, Omegas, veterans, anyone without a noble title or alpha bloodline. Victor approached me 3 weeks ago. Private dinner. Talked about the old days, how the kingdom was stronger when alphas ruled without question, when everyone knew their place. He paused. He asked me to support his vision for the kingdom's future, to convince others in the royal guard to do the same. And you refused. I took an oath to defend the king, not to betray him for some power-hungry noble's fever dream. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. A week later, I got sick. The palace healers can't figure out what's wrong. Fever, weakness, nausea. They've tried everything. Ice slid down my spine. You think Victor poisoned you? I think he's sending a message. That no one is safe. Not even the king's personal guard. Not even family of those he's trying to recruit. He met my eyes then, and I saw the fear there. The barely contained terror of a soldier who'd faced death 100 times and never flinched, now facing something he couldn't fight. I brought you into this, not just to help the king. I brought you to somewhere fortified, somewhere Victor can't easily reach. If war comes, if the conspiracy succeeds and nobles rise against the throne, the border towns will burn, but the palace can hold. The king won't let it fall. The truth of it settled over me like a shroud. My baby brother, dying by inches from poison, had ridden 3 days to save me, had wrapped his fear in talk of duty and the king's trust. I wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at him for the manipulation, for dragging me back into a world I'd tried so hard to leave behind. But all I felt was tired. You should have just told me the truth, I said. Would you have come? I looked at him for a long moment, at the fever sweat on his brow, at the way he held himself like a man bracing for a blow. Yeah, I said finally, I would have. We reached the capital 3 days later. The journey was hard on both of us. My leg ached with every hour in the saddle, the old shrapnel wound making itself known. But Rhys had it worse. By the second night he could barely stay upright. I made camp early, mixed him a tea from my field kit that would help with the fever if nothing else. He slept badly, tossing and mumbling. I kept watch, listening to him call out names in his sleep. Some I recognized, fellow officers, soldiers he'd served with. One name I didn't know, repeated with a tenderness that made my chest ache. Kieran. I filed that away for later. The capital rose from the plains like a promise. High white walls, towers that caught the morning sun and threw it back in blinding glory. At the center, the palace dominated the skyline, alabaster stone and soaring spires, banners bearing the royal wolf crest snapping in the wind. It had been 2 years since I'd seen it last, and something in my chest tightened at the sight. This had been home once, before the war, before Elena, when the world was simpler and I was younger and stupider and thought I could save everyone. Guards at the gate checked our papers with more thoroughness than I remembered. Another sign of the tensions Rhys had mentioned. They waved us through eventually, recognizing Rhys's rank and credentials. Inside, the city was transformed. More guards on patrol than I remembered, checkpoints at major intersections. The citizens moved through it all with a kind of resigned wariness, eyes down, conversations hushed. I'd seen occupied cities that felt more free. Rhys led us not to the palace gates but to a quieter district. Modest homes, small shops. A building that looked like it had been a warehouse once. Now a hand-painted sign over the door read, Royal Veterans Aid Society. This is where we're meeting him? I asked. Rhys nodded, dismounting with visible effort. His Majesty volunteers here 3 times a week. Feeds war widows, helps veterans find work, that sort of thing. The King of the Realm volunteers at a charity kitchen. He says it reminds him what he's fighting for, who he's supposed to protect. Rhys tied his horse to the post. He's not what you expect, Mara, not anymore. Inside, the space was crowded with long tables, benches, a kitchen area where several people worked over steaming pots. The smell hit me first. Soup, bread, coffee. Simple food, but good, and plenty of it. Veterans filled the tables. I could tell by the way they sat, the careful spacing, the eyes that tracked every movement. Some wore pieces of old uniforms. Others were in civilian clothes worn thin with age and use. All had that particular look I knew too well. The look of people who'd given everything and come home to find the world had moved on without them. I scanned the room, looking for the king, expecting to see him at the head table maybe, or in the kitchen, making a show of serving the common soldier. Instead, I found him in the corner washing dishes. He was older than I remembered. Of course he was. 15 years had passed since Thornridge, but seeing it still hit me like a blow. The dark hair gone mostly to gray, tied back in a simple queue. The beard he hadn't worn during the war now covering a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite and worn smooth by time. He wore simple clothes, well-made but unadorned. No crown, no royal insignia, nothing to mark him as the most powerful man in the kingdom. He was washing dishes and talking quietly with an old woman who was drying them. I watched as he worked, methodical and efficient. The woman said something that made him smile, and he responded with easy warmth, asking after her grandson who was recovering from war injuries. She beamed at him, patted his arm like he was her own kin, and bustled away. "King Damon Ashford," Rhys said quietly beside me. "Or as he prefers when he's here, just Damon." The man looked up then, as if sensing our attention. His eyes found Rhys first, and something like relief crossed his features. Then his gaze shifted to me. I'd forgotten about his eyes. Storm gray, sharp enough to cut. They catalogued me in an instant. The limp, the tension in my shoulders, the way my hand rested automatically near my knife. 20 years of military bearing stripped away and examined in the space of a heartbeat. Then he smiled. It was small, tired, but genuine. "Major Blackstone, been a while." His voice was different too. Rougher, like he'd spent too many years giving orders and never quite recovered. "Your Majesty," I said, dropping into a bow despite my leg protesting. Old habits. "None of that. Not here." He dried his hands on a towel, moved around the counter toward us. "Here I'm just a man trying to do some good. The crown stays at the palace." Up close, I could see the scars. New ones since Thornridge. A particularly nasty one that bisected his left eyebrow, paler than the sun-weathered skin around it. Claw marks across his throat that spoke of a fight that had come entirely too close to being his last. But it was his hands that caught my attention. Strong, scarred, steady. The hands of a man who'd done terrible things and kind ones in equal measure and lived with the weight of both. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I know it wasn't an easy choice. Your Majesty's summons didn't leave much room for refusal." I kept my voice neutral, professional. "It wasn't a summons. It was a request. You can refuse. You can walk out right now and I'll have Rhys escort you back to Greywater with my thanks and a purse of gold for your trouble." His gray eyes held mine. "But I'm hoping you'll stay, hoping you'll hear me out." The honesty in his voice made something in my chest loosen. This wasn't the imperious king issuing commands. This was a man asking for help. "I'm listening," I said. "Not here. Too many ears." He gestured toward the kitchen. "Let me finish my shift. Then we'll talk somewhere private." We waited while he worked, watched him move through the kitchen with practiced ease, serving food, clearing tables, stopping to chat with each veteran who came through, learning names, asking about families, treating each person like they mattered. It was the strangest thing I'd ever seen. A king doing the work of a servant, and doing it like it was the most natural thing in the world. When his shift ended, he led us through a back door into a small courtyard. The noise of the city faded to a distant hum. "I'll be direct," Damon said without preamble. "Chancellor Victor is planning to kill me, and half the Royal Council along with me. Mass assassination during the Veterans Memorial Gala in 2 weeks. He wants to create chaos, seize control, install himself as Lord Protector with a puppet king on the throne." "You have proof?" I asked. "Enough to know the threat is real. Not enough to move against him publicly." He pulled a folder from inside his jacket, handed it to me. "Intelligence reports, intercepted communications, financial records showing weapons purchases, all circumstantial, all damning, all inadmissible in a court of law because it would reveal our intelligence network." I opened the folder, scanned the documents. My stomach turned at the scope of it. "This is half the nobility," I said. "Hence the problem. If I accuse Victor without ironclad proof, it looks like I'm purging political opponents. The nobles who support him would see it as tyranny. We'd have civil war within a week. Damon's jaw tightened. So we wait. We let him make his move at the gala. We catch him in the act, publicly, undeniably, and we break his support in one stroke. You're using yourself as bait. I'm using 300 lives as bait. Everyone attending the gala, veterans, nobles, council members, all gathered in one place. His voice was steady, but I could see the strain in his eyes. It's a calculated risk. We think we can stop the attack, save everyone, but it requires perfect execution, perfect timing, someone I can trust absolutely to coordinate security without tipping our hand. And you think that's me? I know it is. I've read every report from Thornridge, every after-action analysis. You held an impossible position because you outthought the enemy at every turn, anticipated their moves, adjusted your defenses in real time. That's what I need now. Someone who can think 3 steps ahead, who won't panic when the plan goes wrong. I looked at Rhys, who'd been silent through this whole exchange. He met my eyes and I saw the plea there. Help, please. Then he collapsed. I moved on instinct, catching him before he hit the ground. He was burning up, skin fever hot even through his uniform. His eyes rolled back and a thin trail of blood leaked from his nose. "Get a healer!" I snapped at Damon. "Now!" He was already moving, shouting for help. Within seconds, people were pouring into the courtyard. Someone brought a stretcher. I kept pressure on Rhys's wrist, feeling for his pulse, thready, weak, fading. A man pushed through the crowd. Tall, lean, with gray-streaked brown hair and gentle eyes that had seen too much death. He dropped to his knees beside me, opened a medical bag, started examining Rhys with swift efficiency. "How long has he been symptomatic?" the man asked. His voice was calm, clinical, the voice of someone who'd worked trauma medicine in war zones. Days, maybe a week, fever, weakness, sweating. I watched him work, recognizing the signs of a skilled physician. "Who are you?" "Royal Physician Kieran Vale. I run the palace medical wing." He pulled out a vial, held it up to the light. "I need to take blood, analyze it." I nodded, moving aside to give him room, watched as he drew a sample with steady hands, sealed it carefully. Damon crouched beside me, voice low. "What happened?" "Poison." The word tasted like ashes. Rhys suspected it, said he got sick a week after refusing Victor's recruitment offer. Kieran looked up sharply. "Wolfsbane?" "Unknown, but given the timeline, the progression of symptoms, it fits the profile." The physician's face went grim. He pulled out another vial, this one filled with a silvery liquid. "Broad-spectrum antidote. It might slow the progression, buy us time to identify the specific compound." He administered it with practiced ease. Rhys didn't stir. "Get him to the medical wing," Kieran ordered the stretcher-bearers. "Full isolation. I want blood work, toxin screens, everything." They lifted my brother carefully, carried him away. I started to follow, but Damon's hand on my arm stopped me. "Let Dr. Vale work," he said quietly. "He's the best we have. If anyone can save Rhys, it's him." I wanted to argue, wanted to go with my brother, stand vigil, do something. But I'd been a field officer long enough to know when to trust specialists. "How long until we know?" I asked Kieran. "Hours. Maybe less if the toxin signature is clear." He met my eyes, and I saw the compassion there, the understanding of someone who'd delivered bad news too many times. "I'll do everything I can, Major Blackstone." "I know." He left, following the stretcher. The courtyard emptied slowly, people drifting back to their tasks. Within minutes, it was just me and Damon again. I felt hollowed out, scraped clean. Rhys was all I had left. Our parents were long dead. Elena was 15 years gone. If I lost him too, there'd be no one left who remembered me as anything but Major Blackstone, the woman who'd held Thornridge and lost 9 soldiers doing it. "I need you to save my brother," I said, voice raw. "Whatever it takes. I'll do your security. I'll catch your conspirators. I'll hold the entire palace if that's what it takes. Just save him." "We'll save him," Damon said firmly. "You have my word as king." I looked at him. Really looked. saw the determination in his eyes, the way he held himself like a man making a vow he intended to keep. "Okay," I said, "show me what you need me to do." He led me through palace corridors I half remembered from my time in service. We passed guards who saluted the king with perfect precision, servants who bowed low as we walked by, everyone moving with the careful choreography of a court that ran on tradition and hierarchy. We climbed to the upper levels, through a door guarded by 2 royal guards who stepped aside at Damon's nod, into a war room that took my breath away. Maps covered every wall, the palace, the city, the surrounding territories, red marks indicating guard positions, blue marks for known threats, green marks for allied forces. A massive table in the center held a scale model of the palace grounds, every building and courtyard rendered in miniature. "This is our command center," Damon said. "Every report comes here, every piece of intelligence, every guard rotation. It's completely secure, only my most trusted advisors have access." I moved to the table, studied the model. Immediately started seeing weak points, unguarded approaches, sight lines a sniper could use. The east wall, there's a gap in coverage between guard towers 3 and 4. Anyone with climbing gear could breach it. "Already identified. We're installing additional patrols. What else?" I circled the table, pointing. "Here, the servants' entrance to the banquet hall. No guards posted. Perfect insertion point for a strike team. We can't guard it without being obvious. It's used constantly for food service. Then guard it with kitchen staff, former soldiers in servant livery. No one questions extra workers during a major event." He nodded, making notes. "Good, what else?" We worked for hours, going over every detail of the palace defenses, every potential threat vector. I fell into the familiar rhythm of tactical planning. The world narrowed to the problem at hand, everything else falling away. It felt like coming home. When we finally took a break, night had fallen. Damon ordered food brought to the war room. Simple fare. Bread, cheese, cold meat. We ate standing, too focused to sit. "Why did you really send for me?" I asked between bites. "You have a dozen tactical officers. Any of them could do this." "Because I trust you. Because 15 years ago you held a position everyone said was impossible. Because when I led the relief force to Thornridge, I found you still standing with 3 soldiers and a pile of enemy dead, still fighting, still refusing to break." He set down his bread, met my eyes. "I need that now, that absolute refusal to surrender. Because if Victor succeeds, if he kills me and the council, this kingdom tears itself apart. Thousands die, maybe tens of thousands, and I can't let that happen. Heavy burden for a king, heavy burden for anyone who gives a damn about the people they're supposed to protect." He paused. "My father taught me that the crown isn't a right. It's a responsibility. Every decision we make affects thousands of lives. We don't get to be wrong, don't get to be weak. We just have to be better than our worst impulses and hope it's enough." I heard the weight in those words, the lonely burden of command. "You sound tired." "I am. 25 years on the throne, 25 years balancing noble demands against commoner rights, trying to reform a system that's been broken for centuries without triggering the very civil war I'm trying to prevent." He smiled ruefully. "Some days I wonder if Victor's right. If strong alpha rule would be simpler. Make the hard choices without debate. Impose order without negotiation. And then I remember my father's reign, the breeding conscription program, the purges, the way he stopped seeing people as people and started seeing them as resources to be managed." His hands clenched. "I will not become that. I would rather die trying to do it right than live having taken the easy path to tyranny." The conviction in his voice made something in my chest warm. This was why I'd agreed to come. Not for duty or obligation or even for Reese. For this. For a king who cared more about being right than being comfortable. "Then let's make sure you live long enough to keep trying," I said. We worked until past midnight. When we finally stopped, exhaustion dragged at my bones. My leg throbbed from standing too long. Damon noticed. "You should rest. I'll have the steward show you to your quarters." "I want to check on Reese first." "Of course." The medical wing was quiet. Kieran met me at the door, looking drawn. He'd been working around the clock on Reese's case. "How is he?" I asked. "Stable. The antidote slowed the poison's progress. But he's weak, Mara. Very weak." Kieran's eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "The toxin has done significant damage to his organs. Even if we neutralize it completely, recovery will take months." "Can I see him?" "Of course, but he's sleeping. Has been most of the evening." Kieran led me to a private room. Reese lay on a narrow bed, looking smaller than I remembered. Thinner. His skin had a grayish cast that made my stomach churn. Medical equipment surrounded him, monitoring his vitals, administering medicines through tubes. I pulled up a chair, took his hand. It was cool, too cool. "Hey, little brother," I said softly. "You look like hell." No response. Just the steady beep of monitors, the shallow rise and fall of his chest. I sat there in silence, holding his hand, feeling utterly helpless. This was the man who'd ridden 3 days to save me, who was dying because he'd refused to betray his king. A hand settled on my shoulder. Damon had stayed. He stood behind my chair, offering comfort without words. "We'll find who did this," he said quietly. "We'll make them answer for it." I believed him. More than that, I trusted him to keep his word. We stood vigil together as the night deepened. Two people bound by duty and loss, and the desperate hope that we could save one good man from a poisoner's cowardice. And in that quiet room with my brother's life hanging by a thread, I made a choice. I would stop Victor's conspiracy. I would protect this king who washed dishes and meant every word he spoke. I would make sure Reese lived to see justice done. Whatever it cost, whatever it took, I was done running. It was time to fight. The throne room smelled like old stone and power. I'd been standing over palace schematics for 3 hours, marking security weak points with a red pencil, and my leg was screaming at me to sit down. I ignored it. Pain was just information. It told me I was still alive. King Damon worked across the table from me, reviewing guard rotations with the kind of focus I recognized from my own years in command. Total absorption. The world narrowed to the problem at hand, everything else falling away. We'd fallen into an easy rhythm over the past week. Mornings in the war room, planning. Afternoons touring the palace grounds, identifying choke points and escape routes. Evenings reviewing intelligence reports, looking for patterns in Victor's movements. And every night, that moment when our hands would brush, reaching for the same document. When our eyes would meet across the table and hold just a fraction too long. When the air would thicken with something neither of us was ready to name. My wolf noticed. She'd been quiet for years, buried under suppressants and trauma and sheer force of will. Now she paced restlessly under my skin, ears pricked toward the king every time he moved. I shoved her down, told her this wasn't the time, wasn't the place. He was the king. I was a discharged soldier hired to do a job. She didn't listen. "Here," I said, tapping a spot on the map. "This corridor connects the banquet hall to the wine cellars. No guards scheduled. Minimal foot traffic during events. Perfect insertion point for a strike team." Damon came around the table to look, close enough that I could feel his body heat. He studied the map, then nodded. "Good catch. We'll post guards at both ends. Visible guards get targeted first. Better to have concealed overwatch. Archers in the gallery disguised as servants." I marked it. "Let them think the corridor's open. Funnel them into the kill box." Ruthless. He glanced at me, something like approval in those storm gray eyes. "Effective. I spent 20 years learning how to kill people efficiently. Might as well use it to keep you alive." "Is that what you tell yourself?" His voice was quiet, not judgmental, just curious. That it's just a skill set, just training. I looked up at him, really looked. Saw the weight he carried in the set of his shoulders, the lines around his eyes. This man had made the kind of calls that haunted you, had sent soldiers to their deaths for the greater good. He knew exactly what I was trying to convince myself of. Sometimes, I admitted. Other times I just drink until the ghosts stop talking. "And does it work?" "No, but it passes the time between nightmares." Damon was quiet for a moment, then, "Come with me. There's something I want you to see." He led me out of the war room, through corridors lined with portraits of past kings. We climbed stairs to the palace's highest tower, then out onto a balcony I hadn't known existed. The kingdom spread below us, the capital city with its markets and homes and lives being lived. Beyond the walls, farmland stretched to distant mountains, peaceful and golden in the afternoon sun. "This is what I think about," Damon said. "When the cost feels too high, when I'm weighing whether to send soldiers into battle or negotiate with enemies who don't deserve mercy." He leaned on the railing. All those lives down there. Farmers, merchants, children, people who just want to live in peace. That's what the crown protects. Not power, not tradition. Them. I understood what he was trying to tell me. That leadership meant sacrifice. That the weight was real, but the alternative was worse. "The 9 who died at Thornridge," I said slowly. "They bought time. Time for the relief force to arrive. Time for hundreds of other soldiers to retreat in good order instead of being slaughtered." "Exactly. The math is brutal, but it's honest." He turned to look at me. "You made the right calls, Mara. Don't let guilt convince you otherwise." Something in my chest loosened, just a fraction. Before I could respond, a servant appeared. "Your Majesty, the royal physician requests your presence. It's urgent." We rushed to the medical wing. Kieran met us at the door, his face carefully neutral. "Rhys is stable, but I've completed the toxin analysis." He led us to his private office, spread documents across his desk, chemical formulas, test results, analysis reports. "It's wolfsbane," Kieran said. "A refined military-grade blend, high concentration. But there's something else, something I've never seen before." He pointed to a specific test result. "The poison is designed to target a specific bloodline marker. It's not just killing Rhys, it's attacking his wolf at a genetic level." "I don't understand," I said. "Wolfsbane affects all wolves the same." "Common wolfsbane, yes. But this is engineered, tailored to attack wolves with a particular genetic signature." Kieran pulled out another document. "I ran Rhys's blood work through our genealogical database, and I found something remarkable." He slid a parchment toward me, a family tree, complex, branching, going back centuries. "Your family isn't just common stock, Mara. You and Rhys carry the Silverblood marker, an ancient royal bloodline thought to be extinct." His finger traced the tree. "Your great-great-great-grandmother was Princess Lyanna Silverblood, youngest daughter of King Aldrich III. She married a commoner, was stripped of her titles, and her line was removed from succession, but the blood remained." The room tilted. "We're royalty?" "Distant royalty. So far removed it doesn't matter for succession. But the bloodline is real, and it comes with certain properties." Kieran pulled out another report. "Silverblood wolves have enhanced healing, stronger mate bonds, and when bonded to an alpha king, they amplify his power significantly. It's why the old kings always chose Silverblood mates. Their unions produced the strongest heirs." Damon had gone very still beside me. "The poison targets Silverblood specifically, which means Victor knows about Mara's lineage and sees her as a threat," Kieran said. "If you were to bond with her, Your Majesty, your power would increase substantially. Enough to challenge Victor's supporters, enough to solidify your rule and make any coup attempt suicide." "So he poisoned Rhys to send a message," I said slowly. "Stay away from the palace, stay away from the king, or your family dies." "It appears so." I looked at Damon, saw the calculation in his eyes, the tactical assessment. A Silverblood mate would solve his political problems, would give him the power to face Victor directly, would turn me from a person into a resource. "No," I said flatly. Both men looked at me. "I'm not a breeding mare. I'm not a political tool. I don't care if I'm descended from kings or paupers. I'm here to do a job. After that, I'm gone." I turned to Kieran. "Can you save Rhys without me bonding anyone?" "With the right antidote, yes, but it will take time, weeks, maybe months." "Then you have weeks. Do your job, physician. I'll do mine." I walked out before either of them could respond. Strode through corridors until I found an empty courtyard. Stood there shaking with fury I didn't entirely understand. Silverblood, royal lineage, mate bond amplification. Just another way to use me. Another reason I was valuable for what I could provide rather than who I was. I'd spent 20 years fighting to be seen as a soldier, not just an Omega. And now I was supposed to accept being seen as a bloodline, a genetic advantage, a way to boost the king's power. I handled that poorly. I turned. Damon had followed me. He stood at the courtyard entrance, hands empty, posture non-threatening. "You think?" I snapped. I was doing tactical assessment, weighing options. It's what I do, what I've done for 25 years on the throne. He took a careful step closer. "But you're right. You're not a resource. You're a person. And I apologize for losing sight of that." Easy to say now. True, but I mean it. He came closer, stopped just out of reach. "Can I tell you something? About why I've never taken a mate despite the council's constant pressure?" I didn't answer, just waited. Because every woman they've paraded in front of me for the past 2 decades has been presented as a political alliance, a bloodline merger, a way to secure noble support or produce strong heirs or cement my power base. His voice was tired. "I've refused them all, every single one, because I won't reduce another person to their utility, won't bind someone to me who doesn't choose it freely." "So you're saying you don't want to bond with me because of the Silverblood thing?" "I'm saying if we bond, it will be because we choose each other as people, not because of bloodlines or politics or power calculations." He held my gaze. "And I'm saying, I felt something the moment you walked into that aid society, before I knew about Silverblood, before any of this political mess. Just you, the woman who held Thornridge, who limps but doesn't slow down, who cares more about saving lives than collecting titles." My wolf stirred, interested despite my anger. "You felt something," I repeated. "My wolf recognized yours. And yes, I know that sounds like mystical nonsense, but it's true. For the first time in 58 years, my wolf sat up and said, 'There she is.' Not 'there's a useful bloodline' or 'there's a political opportunity', just 'there she is.' Finally." The honesty in his voice did something to my defenses, made them crack just a little. "I can't do this," I said quietly. "Can't let someone matter. Last time I did that, I watched her die in my arms. Elena, my sister, my best friend, my pack." The words came harder than I expected. She died protecting me, buying me time to save others. And I've spent 15 years telling myself I had to stay alone because caring about people gets them killed. Damon was quiet for a long moment. "What if you're wrong? What if isolation is what gets people killed? What if having someone to fight for makes you stronger, not weaker?" "That's a pretty theory." "It's not theory. It's what I saw at Thornridge. You fought like hell for your soldiers, refused to abandon them, made calls that saved 3 lives when anyone else would have saved 0. He took another step closer. "You're stronger when you have something to protect, Mara. And I think I could be too. You want to use me to boost your power. I want to bond with you because my wolf has been howling for 15 years and finally found what it was looking for. The power boost would be a side effect, not the goal." I wanted to argue, wanted to maintain my anger, but standing here, looking into storm-gray eyes that held nothing but sincerity, the fight drained out of me. "I'm scared," I admitted. "So am I. Terrified. Of failing you. Of becoming what my father was. Of losing you before I've even had the chance to know you properly." "Then what do? We take it one day at a time, one choice at a time. No pressure, no expectations. Just see where it goes." He held out his hand. "Starting with this. Would you do me the honor of joining me for dinner tonight, not as king and tactical advisor, just as 2 people who might want to know each other better?" I looked at his hand, rough with calluses, scarred, honest. Slowly I placed mine in his. "Okay, dinner, but I reserve the right to bolt if you start talking bloodlines and heirs." He smiled, actually smiled, warm and genuine. "Deal." Dinner was in his private quarters, not the formal dining hall. Simple food, good wine, no servants hovering, just us and conversation that flowed easier than I expected. He told me about growing up as crown prince, the pressure, the loneliness, the weight of knowing thousands of lives would one day depend on his choices. I told him about my sister, about serving together, about the last mission and how I'd been carrying her voice in my head for 15 years. She didn't say run, did she? Damon asked quietly. I looked up, startled. What? Her last words. You said she told you to run. But that's not quite right, is it? How did he know? Reese told you. He told me Elena said live for both of us, that you changed it in your mind to run because you needed permission to survive without her. His eyes were gentle. But she wanted you to actually live, not just survive. There's a difference. Tears pricked my eyes. Damn him for seeing through me so easily. It's easier to survive. Living means risk, means caring again, means opening yourself up to loss. It also means joy, connection, purpose beyond just getting through the day. He reached across the table, covered my hand with his. I think Elena would want you to risk it, would want you to find something worth living for, not just surviving. And you think that's you? That you're worth the risk? I think we could be worth it, together, if we're brave enough to try. My wolf pushed forward, not demanding, just hopeful, wanting. And for the first time in 15 years, I didn't shove her down. I let her voice be heard. Yes, she whispered, this one, finally. Over the next few days, something shifted between us. The work continued, the planning, the security preparations. But now there were stolen moments, a touch that lingered, eyes meeting across rooms, small smiles shared when no one else was looking. My heat cycle started exactly a week before the gala. I'd expected it. Stress, proximity to a compatible mate. My suppressants had been fighting a losing battle for days. I tried to hide it, took double doses of medication, stayed in my quarters when the scent got too strong. Damon noticed anyway. He found me on the same balcony where we'd first talked about purpose. I was standing in the cool night air, trying to calm the fever burning under my skin. You should have told me, he said quietly. It's not your problem, isn't it? I can scent you, Mara. Have been able to for days, and it's taking every ounce of control I have not to respond. He kept his distance, giving me space. If my presence is making this harder for you, I can leave the palace. Go to the summer residence until the gala. The offer was genuine. He'd leave his own home to make me more comfortable. It made me furious and tender all at once. Don't you dare, I said. This is your palace, your conspiracy to stop. I'm not chasing you out because my biology is inconvenient. Then what do you need? I need you to stop being so damn considerate. I need you to stop asking permission for every little thing. I need you to just... I trailed off, not sure how to finish. What? Tell me what you need and I'll do it. I need to know this is real. The words came out broken, desperate. I need to know you want me for me. Not because I'm convenient, not because I'm Silverblood, not because of mate bonds or power boosts or political advantages. Just me, the broken soldier with nightmares and a limp and 15 years of baggage. He crossed the balcony in 3 strides, cupped my face in his hands. You are the most real thing that's happened to me in 25 years. Every moment I spend with you feels like waking up from a dream I didn't know I was having. And yes, my wolf knows you're Silverblood. Yes, the power boost exists. But I would want you if you were a common omega with no bloodline at all. Would want you if bonding with you cost me power instead of granting it. Because you make me remember what I'm fighting for. You make me want to be better, and that's worth more than any throne. The heat in my blood surged, not painful, just intense. My wolf clawing to get closer to this man who saw me, really saw me. Damon, I breathed. Tell me what you want, Mara. Your choice, always your choice. I want you to mark me, bond me, make me yours. The words fell out before I could stop them. I want to stop running, stop hiding, stop being afraid. I want to choose something, choose you, choose us. You're certain? Because once I mark you, there's no undoing it. You'll be tied to me, to the throne, to all the politics and danger that comes with it. I'm certain I choose this, I choose you. His control shattered. He kissed me like a drowning man finding air, desperate, reverent, pouring every ounce of longing into the press of lips and tongue. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "Where?" he asked, voice rough. "Where do you want me to mark you?" The traditional place was the neck, the joining of shoulder and throat where everyone could see, a public claim. I'd spent 20 years hiding, making myself small, avoiding notice. "No more." "Here," I said, tilting my head, baring my throat. "Where the whole court can see, where I can't hide what I've chosen. Mara." My name was prayer and promise. "You honor me more than you know." His teeth found the spot, pressed down, not hard enough to break skin yet, just promising. "Last chance," he murmured against my throat. "Last chance to change your mind." "Mark me." He bit down. The pain was sharp and bright and perfect. My wolf sang. The bond that had been building crashed to life, fully formed, linking us in ways that went beyond physical. I felt his emotions flood through the new connection. Relief, joy, love so profound it made my knees weak. And underneath, the steady drumbeat of his wolf's conviction. Mine, protect, cherish, mine. My wolf answered mine, partner, equal home. When he pulled back, blood stained his mouth. He licked it away, eyes gone wolf bright with gold. "My mate," he said, voice rough with emotion. "My mate," I echoed. Then, because the moment was too intense and I needed to lighten it, "My king," he laughed, actually laughed, pulling me into his arms. "Our secret for now. The court doesn't need to know until after we've dealt with Victor." Agreed. We stood there wrapped around each other as the night deepened. Tomorrow would bring more planning, more danger, more conspiracy to unravel. Tonight we had this, the bond fresh and new and perfect, the promise of a future if we could survive to claim it. 3 days before the gala, intelligence reported unusual activity. Victor meeting with known supporters. Funds transferring through hidden accounts. Weapons being moved in the dead of night. "He's accelerating his timeline," Damon said, studying the reports. "Something's changed. Something's made him nervous." "He knows about Mara's bloodline," Kieran said quietly. We were in the war room, our inner circle. Just us, the royal spy master, and a few trusted advisors. The poison was meant to warn her off, but she stayed, bonded with you. Now he's desperate. "Desperate enemies make mistakes," I said. "What's his target? Where's he planning to strike?" We pored over intelligence. Patterns emerged, equipment purchases, personnel movements, all pointing to one conclusion. "The memorial monument," the spy master said. "Victor donated a bronze statue to honor fallen veterans. It's being installed in the main courtyard where the gala ceremony will take place." My blood ran cold. "The statue is the weapon." Damon caught on immediately. "A bomb, cast into the bronze itself. When it detonates, the shrapnel will be devastating." "Everyone in the courtyard dies," I finished. "Hundreds of casualties. Victor blames it on extremists, offers to restore order as Lord Protector, uses the chaos to seize the throne." "Can we disarm it?" Damon asked. "Not without taking the whole thing apart," the spy master said. "And if there are anti-tamper devices, one wrong move triggers the bomb immediately. Then we evacuate, cancel the gala, and tip Victor off that we know. He'll just wait. Try again. We'll never get another chance to catch him in the act." Silence fell. We'd found the bomb, but we were trapped by it. "We set up a dampening field," I said slowly. "Block the remote detonator. Victor tries to trigger it. Nothing happens. He panics, shows himself. We take him publicly." "And if the dampening fails?" someone asked. "Then we die," Damon said flatly. "But thousands more live because we stopped Victor here. It's an acceptable trade." I looked at him, saw the weight of command in his eyes, the terrible mathematics of leadership. "It's not acceptable to me," I said, "but it's necessary. So we make sure the dampening works. We plan for every contingency, and we survive together or die together, as mates." His hand found mine under the table, squeezed once. The next 2 days blurred together in preparation. We installed the dampening field, posted guards, ran drills, prepared for every scenario we could imagine. And at night, Damon and I stole hours together, learning each other, building something that felt solid and real and worth fighting for. The morning of the gala dawned clear and cold. Perfect weather for a memorial ceremony. Perfect weather for an assassination. I dressed in formal uniform. The mark on my neck was visible above the collar. fresh, red, unmistakable. I touched it gently, felt the echo of Damon through the bond. His determination, his fear, his love. We were ready as we'd ever be. The gala began at sunset. Speeches, toasts, remembrances of the fallen. I moved through the crowd, watching, searching for threats. Damon gave the opening address. His voice carried across the hall, strong, certain, honoring the sacrifices of those who'd served. Through the bond, I felt his terror, his awareness of the bomb outside, his fear that despite everything, people would die. I sent reassurance back. We've got this. Together. The unveiling was scheduled for the ceremony's climax. Time enough for wine to flow, for guards to relax. Time enough for Victor to make his move. I positioned myself near the courtyard entrance. Our dampening field was active. No signals getting through. The crowd filtered outside, gathered around the shrouded monument. Damon stood at the front, ready to pull the ceremonial cloth. I scanned the perimeter, rooftops, windows, anywhere Victor might be watching from. There, a figure on the east tower, partially concealed. I signaled our people. Damon gripped the cloth. Let us honor our fallen. He pulled. The statue was revealed, a kneeling soldier, beautiful and deadly. Nothing happened. The crowd applauded, admired the craftsmanship. I watched the tower figure, saw him raise something, pointed at the courtyard, a remote detonator. He triggered it, once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. Even from this distance, I could see the confusion, the growing alarm. Then he jumped down, landed in the courtyard with impossible grace. Chancellor Victor Ashcroft strode through the parting crowd like a man who owned the world. He stopped in front of the statue, ran his hand along the bronze. Beautiful work, he said. I commissioned it myself, every detail perfect. Damon stepped forward. Victor, this isn't the place, isn't it? This monument represents everything I fought to build. A kingdom where strength protects the weak, where order prevents chaos. His eyes swept the crowd. And you've perverted that vision, shared power with those unworthy of it, weakened the throne with sentiment. There's a bomb in that statue, Damon said clearly. We found it, disabled your detonator. Your coup ends tonight. The crowd erupted, gasps, shouts, people backing away. Victor didn't seem surprised. Of course you found it. You're brilliant. But you're wrong about one thing. This was never about the coup. Ice slid down my spine. The bomb. The conspiracy. All of it designed to focus your attention here, on the palace. His eyes found me. While I removed the real threat, the Silverblood mate who would make you unstoppable. Damon went rigid. Mara, get behind me. But it was too late. Victor's people moved. Wolves pouring from shadows, coming straight for me. I shifted on instinct. Met the first attacker head on, but there were too many. Damon shifted, massive, powerful, tore into them, but they kept coming. A swarm meant to overwhelm. One got through, jaws closing on my shoulder. I howled. Damon heard. His answering roar shook the courtyard, and I felt something change through the bond. His control snapped. He became primal fury given form, destroyed Victor's people with terrifying efficiency, and didn't stop. He moved toward the crowd, toward innocence. I shifted back, threw myself in his path. Look at me, I commanded through the bond. His jaws were inches from my throat, eyes gone black. It's me, your mate, Mara, come back. Recognition flickered. Gray eyes, horrified, stared back. He shifted, fell to his knees. I almost killed you. But you didn't. I called and you came back. Victor's slow clap echoed, touching but ultimately pointless. He stood by his monument, alone. His plan failed. But he was smiling. You've won tonight, he said. But the kingdom is fractured, and I've planted seeds that will grow long after I'm gone. Enjoy your Silverblood queen, your majesty. She won't save you from what's coming. Guards moved in, took him into custody. The gala was over, but we'd survived, together. Victor sat in the palace dungeon like a king on a throne. Chains bound his wrists and ankles, but he wore them with the same dignity he'd worn his chancellor's robes. When the guards brought me to his cell 3 days after the failed assassination, he smiled. Major Blackstone, or should I say Lady Silverblood, congratulations on your bonding. The mark suits you. I ignored the bait. I need answers about my brother, about the poison, about why you targeted my family specifically. Straight to business. How very military of you. He leaned back against the stone wall. Very well. I'll tell you everything. What do I have to lose? I'm already condemned. The truth would be a start. The truth. He laughed. The truth is that I've been planning this for 30 years, since before you were born. Since the day King Damon's father discovered my research into ancient bloodlines and ordered it destroyed. What research? The Silverblood line. I found records in the royal archives, hidden, suppressed. Proof that the old kings had deliberately bred with silver-blood mates to produce stronger heirs, that the bloodline could be traced, identified, cultivated. His eyes gleamed. I proposed a breeding program, controlled matings between identified silver-blood carriers and carefully selected alphas. Within 3 generations, we could have produced rulers of unprecedented power, a dynasty that would last 1,000 years. My stomach turned. You wanted to use people like livestock. I wanted to ensure the kingdom's strength, but the old king refused, called it barbaric, destroyed my research, and banished me from court. Victor's face hardened. So I waited, bided my time, rose through the ranks as Chancellor. And when young Damon took the throne, I thought I'd have a second chance, a more enlightened king who would see reason. But Damon refused you too. He did worse. He enacted reforms, gave rights to common wolves, weakened the alpha bloodlines by encouraging mixed matings, systematically dismantled everything that made our kingdom strong. Victor stood, chains clinking. So I adapted my plan. If I couldn't breed strength, I'd eliminate weakness. I identified every Silverblood carrier in the kingdom. Your family was one of 3 remaining lines. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. Elena, the ambush at Thornridge, that was you. Your sister was Silverblood, strong, capable. If she'd survived the war and bonded with an alpha of power, she could have produced heirs that threatened my vision for the future. He said it calmly, clinically, like discussing crop rotation. So I arranged for enemy forces to receive intelligence about your squad's route, ensured they had overwhelming numbers, guaranteed that some of you would die. You murdered her to prevent her from having children. I removed a genetic variable that didn't serve my purposes. There's a difference. Rage filled me, pure and incandescent. My wolf howled for blood. Every instinct screamed to shift, to tear this man apart. But I'd made a promise to Damon. We would be better than our enemies. We would choose justice over vengeance. You're going to trial, I said, voice shaking with the effort of control. You're going to confess everything in open court. And you're going to spend the rest of your life watching the kingdom thrive without you. Watching Damon's rule strengthen. Watching me bear children who prove your entire philosophy was wrong. Something flickered in his eyes, not quite fear, but close. You think you've won, he said. But I planted seeds, Major. Ideas in the minds of nobles who remember the old ways. Doubts about soft alpha rule. Questions about whether sentiment has made the kingdom vulnerable. He smiled. I may die in this cell, but my vision will outlive me. Then we'll spend however long it takes rooting it out, every seed, every doubt, every poisonous idea. I turned to leave. Enjoy your cell, Chancellor. It's all the kingdom you'll ever rule. I walked out to the sound of his laughter echoing off stone walls. That night I visited Reese. Kieran had worked miracles. The poison was neutralized, the damage reversing slowly. My brother was sitting up in bed, color returned to his face. You look better, I said. Feel better. Dr. Vale says I'll make a full recovery, eventually. He smiled. Heard you had an interesting conversation with Victor. He confessed to everything. Elena's death, the Silverblood targeting, his plans for genetic engineering. I sat on the edge of his bed. He killed our sister to prevent her from having strong children. I know. Kieran told me. Reese's hand found mine. I'm sorry, Mara. Sorry you had to learn that. Sorry I didn't protect you both better. You were 19 when Elena died, not your job to protect anyone. Felt like it should have been. He paused. There's something I need to tell you about Elena's last words. My chest tightened. What about them? She didn't say run. I lied to you. I'm sorry. I thought it would help. Thought giving you permission to escape would make the guilt easier." He swallowed hard. "She said, 'Live for both of us.' Made me promise to tell you. To make sure you actually lived instead of just surviving." The words hit like a physical blow. 15 years. 15 years I'd been carrying the wrong message. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because you were already broken." Adding more weight felt cruel. But I was wrong. You needed the truth. Needed to know she wanted you to thrive, not hide. Tears leaked from my eyes. I didn't wipe them away. She wanted me to live, to find joy, to connect with people. She wanted you to find this. Reese gestured between us, at the bond mark visible on my neck. Wanted you to find someone worth building a life with, and you did. You found the king who treats you like an equal, who asks instead of demands, who saw you and chose you for exactly who you are. I'm scared, Reese. Scared of losing him. Scared of losing you. Scared of caring so much it destroys me when the inevitable happens. Then be scared, but do it anyway. Live scared, love scared, build something beautiful while you can, knowing it might not last forever, but choosing to try anyway. He squeezed my hand. That's what Elena meant. That's what she died protecting. Your chance to actually live. A knock on the door interrupted us. Kieran entered, carrying medical charts. He froze when he saw me. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not intruding," Reese said quickly. "Come in. Mara was just leaving anyway." I stood, but not before I saw the way my brother looked at the physician, the tenderness, the longing, and the way Kieran looked back. "Actually," I said, "I think you two need to talk without me hovering." "Mara," Reese started. "No, you've spent weeks healing my brother, sitting vigil, saving his life, and I've seen how he says your name in his sleep." I looked at Kieran. "Tell him, whatever you're afraid to say, life's too short for cowardice." I left before either could respond. The days leading up to Victor's trial were a blur. Preparing evidence, coordinating testimonies, ensuring the case was ironclad, and planning for what came after. "The council wants me to execute him," Damon said one evening. We were in his private quarters, the trial documents spread across his desk, publicly, as a warning to anyone else who might plot against the throne. "What do you want?" "I want justice, but I'm not sure execution serves that." He looked at me. Am I being weak? Soft? Proving Victor right by hesitating to use ultimate force? "You're being thoughtful. There's a difference." I moved behind him, wrapped my arms around his shoulders. What would execution accomplish? It would end the threat permanently, would send a clear message about the consequences of treason. It would also make him a martyr. Give his supporters a rallying point, a symbol of the king who's too cruel, too willing to kill without mercy. I kissed his temple. Life imprisonment accomplishes the same thing without the symbolism. He dies forgotten in a cell while the kingdom moves on without him. "The council won't like it." "The council doesn't have to like it. You're the king. Make the call you can live with." He covered my hands with his. "I'm making you queen consort. The coronation will be the day after the trial concludes. The council has already approved it. They're thrilled about the Silverblood connection." My stomach fluttered. "Queen me. You. My mate. My partner. My equal in all things." He turned in his chair, pulled me onto his lap. "I know it's not what you signed up for, but I need you beside me. Not just as tactical advisor or bonded mate, as queen, ruling this kingdom together." "I'm a soldier. I don't know how to be queen." "You're a leader who people trust, who makes hard calls without flinching, who cares about doing what's right even when it costs everything." His hands cupped my face. That's all being queen is, leading, caring, making impossible choices and living with them. You've been doing that for 20 years. I thought about it. About standing beside Damon not as advisor, but as equal ruler. About having real power to enact change, to protect veterans, to reform the systems that had failed so many. About finally stepping fully into the life Elena had wanted me to live. "Okay," I said, "make me queen. Let's do this together." His kiss was answer and promise both. The trial lasted 3 days. Victor confessed to everything. The Silverblood targeting, Elena's murder, the assassination plot, the genetic breeding schemes. The courtroom sat in stunned silence as he laid out 30 years of conspiracy. When it was over, when the evidence had been presented and the verdict read, Damon stood to pronounce sentence. Chancellor Victor Ashcroft, you have been found guilty of high treason, conspiracy to commit regicide, and crimes against the realm. The penalty prescribed by law is death. The courtroom held its breath. However, I am commuting your sentence to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. You will spend the remainder of your days in confinement, contemplating the failure of your vision and watching this kingdom flourish without you. Victor's face went white. You're condemning me to irrelevance. I'm condemning you to justice. May you live long enough to see how wrong you were about everything. Guards led him away. The trial was over. The next day, the palace transformed. Flowers everywhere, banners bearing both the royal wolf and the ancient Silverblood crest, newly restored. Nobles and commoners alike gathering to witness history. I stood in chambers being dressed by attendants I didn't know. The coronation gown was beautiful. Silvery blue silk that seemed to shimmer when I moved. Simple crown of woven silver waiting on its cushion. You look terrified, Kieran said from the doorway. I jumped. Shouldn't you be with Rhys? I was. He's resting before the ceremony. Insisted I check on you. Kieran came into the room, dismissed the attendants with a wave. He says you're probably planning an escape route right now. There's a servant's passage behind that tapestry. Leads to the stables. I could be in the border country by nightfall, and you'd regret it for the rest of your life. He adjusted my sleeve with gentle hands. You love him, the king. I've seen you together, the way you look at each other when you think no one's watching. Loving him and being queen are different things. Not really. Being queen is just loving him publicly, supporting him, standing beside him when things get hard. You're already doing that. The crown just makes it official. I met his eyes. Rhys told you about Elena, about what she wanted for me. He did, and she was right. You deserve to live fully, to embrace joy instead of just surviving grief. Kieran smiled. Take it from someone who spent 15 years just surviving, who let fear keep him from telling the man he loved how he felt. Don't make my mistakes. You told Rhys? The night you visited, after you left. I told him everything, that I loved him, that watching him nearly die was the worst experience of my life, that I wanted a future with him if he'd have me. His smile widened. He said he'd been waiting months for me to get up the courage. Then he kissed me and ruined all my carefully planned speeches. Despite my nerves, I laughed. I'm glad. You're good together. So are you and the king. Now go prove it to the kingdom. The coronation ceremony was held in the Great Hall. Every noble family in attendance, every high-ranking officer, the entire royal council, hundreds of people watching as I walked down the long aisle toward the throne, toward Damon. He stood waiting, dressed in full royal regalia, crown on his head, scepter in hand, every inch the king. But his eyes were soft when they found mine, filled with love and pride and something that looked like awe. I reached the dais, knelt before the throne as tradition demanded. The high priest began the ceremony. Ancient words about duty and service and the sacred bond between ruler and kingdom. Then Damon spoke, not the formal words expected, but his own. Mara Blackstone, you came to this palace as a soldier, expecting to serve for 2 weeks and leave. Instead, you saved my life, saved this kingdom, and gave me something I'd stopped believing I'd ever find. Hope, partnership, love. His voice carried across the hall. I ask you now, before these witnesses, before the gods and the kingdom, will you stand beside me, rule with me, be my queen and my mate for as long as we both draw breath? The question wasn't part of the ceremony, but it was pure Damon, asking, offering choice even now. I will, I said clearly. I choose you. I choose us. I choose to live instead of just surviving. He smiled, took the crown from its cushion, placed it gently on my head. Then rise, Queen Mara, Silverblood and soldier, mate and partner, equal ruler of this realm. I stood, turned to face the hall, saw hundreds of faces looking back, some approving, some skeptical, some simply curious about the discharged major who'd become queen. I met their gazes steadily. This was who I was now. Not just a survivor, not just a soldier, but a queen who would fight for this kingdom with everything I had. The hall erupted in applause, formal, measured, but genuine. Damon took my hand, raised it high. I present to you Queen Mara Ashford, first of her name, Silverblood, and defender of the realm. The applause grew louder, became something like celebration. We descended from the dais together, walked back down that long aisle as king and queen, partners, mates, equals. At the doors, Rhys waited, standing on his own, Kieran beside him for support. My brother bowed low as we passed. Your Majesties. I stopped, pulled him into an embrace that probably scandalized half the court. Thank you for bringing me here, for saving my life by making me live it. Thank you for not running, he whispered back. Elena would be proud. The celebration lasted into the night. Nobles offering congratulations, veterans embracing me as one of their own, common folk cheering from the streets below. And through it all, Damon's hand in mine, steady, sure, home. When we finally escaped to our private quarters, exhaustion dragged at my bones. I sat heavily on the bed, crown still on my head, gown pooling around me. We did it, I said. We did. Damon knelt in front of me, started unlacing my formal shoes. How do you feel? Terrified, exhilarated, like I just jumped off a cliff and discovered I could fly. He laughed, helped me stand so I could remove the heavy gown, hung the crown carefully on its stand. We changed into comfortable clothes, climbed into bed, and lay there wrapped around each other. I have something to tell you, I said after a while. I'm pregnant. He went very still. Then he rolled over, propped himself up on one elbow, eyes wide. You're certain? Kieran confirmed it yesterday. About 6 weeks. Happened right after the bonding. I bit my lip. I know it's fast. I know we just got married and you just made me queen and everything's happening all at once. But I wanted you to know, I'm going to be a father. Wonder filled his voice. We're going to have a child. Are you happy? Or is this one more complication you don't need? Happy doesn't begin to cover it. He placed his hand on my still flat stomach. We're going to have a child. Our child. Living proof that Victor was wrong about everything. That love and choice make us stronger, not weaker. I covered his hand with mine. We'll be good parents, better than our own were. We'll try. We'll fail sometimes, but we'll keep trying, together. Together, I agreed. We fell asleep like that, hand in hand. Future stretching before us, uncertain but bright, full of possibility. In the morning I woke to find Damon already up, standing on our private balcony looking out over the kingdom. I joined him, wrapped in a robe against the cool air. What are you thinking about? Everything we have to do, the reforms I want to push through, the veteran programs to expand, the Silverblood families to locate and protect, the nobles who supported Victor to win back or neutralize. He pulled me against his side, and underneath all of it, how grateful I am. That Rhys rode to Greywater, that you said yes, that you're here beside me now. Where else would I be? Running, hiding, surviving instead of living. He kissed my temple. But you're not. You're here. You chose to stay, chose to fight, chose us. I thought about Elena, about the message I'd carried wrong for 15 years, about finally understanding what she'd meant. Live for both of us. I was. Finally. Completely. Living as queen and mate and mother-to-be. Building something beautiful with a king who saw me as an equal, creating a future that honored every sacrifice that had brought me here. I love you, I said simply. I love you too. He turned to face me fully. Queen Mara, my brilliant, stubborn, beautiful mate. Thank you for choosing me, for choosing this life, for being exactly who you are. I kissed him, soft, sure, full of promise for all the tomorrows we'd face together. Below us, the kingdom woke. People going about their lives, farmers and merchants and soldiers and children, all of them safer because we'd stopped Victor, all of them counting on us to rule with wisdom and justice. It was a heavy burden, but standing here with Damon's arms around me, Our child growing inside me, the future bright with possibility. It felt manageable. More than manageable. It felt right. We would face whatever came together, as partners, as mates, as king and queen of a realm, learning that strength came not from dominance but from connection, not from fear but from love freely given and fully returned. Victor had been wrong about everything. About bloodlines and breeding and control, about soft alphas and the weakness of choice. The kingdom he'd tried to shape through force would thrive through freedom, through reforms that lifted everyone, through a queen who remembered what it meant to serve because she'd spent 20 years doing exactly that. And when our child was born, they would grow up in a palace where love was celebrated, not engineered, where mates were chosen, not assigned, where strength meant protecting the vulnerable, not dominating them. That was the kingdom we would build. Together, one choice at a time, one reform at a time, one generation at a time. It wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks, opposition, hard days when the weight felt crushing. But we would endure, because that's what soldiers did. That's what queens did. That's what mates did. We endured, we fought, we loved. And in the end, we won not through force, but through the simple radical choice to keep trying, to keep believing, to keep living fully instead of just surviving. Elena would have been proud, and that was victory enough.